Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. I've got Leeanne from KLAR HR.
Hello, hi.
It took a while, didn't it?
You got there in the end.
You won't see the cuts. So, tell us a little bit about why you decided to get involved in people's lives and work, because that's quite a tough one, tough gig sometimes, I think.
Yeah, so for me, it kind of was something. I've always been a people person ever since I was a child. I was kind of always the one, kind of sort of helping and always trying to find the solution to help people all the time. And when I went into the world of work, I kind of fell into HR really. So I was working at the time for the NHS, working for a Welsh Government incentive, basically, or project they were looking at to reduce the NHS waiting lists at the time.
Yeah,
And I was working quite closely with the HR team.
yeah,
And we were on a staff night out one night, somebody was leaving, and I got chatting to somebody from HR, and they said, "Oh, there is a role coming up, and we'd really like you to apply for it." And it was kind of like, I didn't even really know what HR did at that time. I was kind of like, yeah, sure, I'll go for it. I'll come for the interview, and I
yeah.
got the job.
Wow.
Yeah, I got the job. So it was something starting off in. It was a real big learning curve. But because I think I'm naturally a people person, and I'm fairly confident, in terms of the way I come forwards.
Yeah,
So I kind of just took to it really like a duck to water.
yeah.
So yeah, and I think working in the NHS, starting off, I moved through various different sectors before actually, becoming an independent consultant. So it's been a journey. It's been a roller coaster.
So it's interesting to me where, you know, HR works and doesn't work. I think as a business owner, you've got to do everything above board. You want to look after the people and whatever else. And then on the flip side of that, you've got a marketplace that's very much like for the people, as in for the team, and rightly so. How do you find the balance between the employer and the employee? Because I think that's the hardest thing, is to find that balance. Because an employee will say, well, it's the HR company's on the side of an employer all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
And so that's the biggest gripe. And then an employer say, well, it's always about them and what about me type thing. So how do you find that balance? Because I find HR people are like always the voice in the middle to try and bring some reason between the two parties. Do you find yourself still having to do that even today, or is it a bit easier?
It's easier. It's
Yeah.
definitely easier as I've gone on. I've been doing this now 20 odd years. So, and I think it depends. If you're working in corporate, it's very different.
Yeah.
You don't. So that's one of the reasons I left corporate in the end. I think because my moral compass was just flawed.
Yeah.
So you very much, employees will say, and I had it recently from a director in a business, and she said to me, "Are you on the company side or you're on my side? And what I say to you, does it stay confidential?" And I said, I'm here to make sure that the company do everything right, and also they do it right by the employee, but also do it right by themselves.
Yeah.
And anything you say to me that's confidential stays with me unless it puts the business at risk.
Yeah.
Then I can't keep it confidential.
Of course.
So it's a bit of a balance, but I'm very clear. So people can trust me.
Yeah.
We're not typically trusted as HR professionals, and that's very much where I come into it, to put the human back into it, because people go, HR, ugh, no. But it is very much focused on protecting the business. But if a business doesn't do right, I will tell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell those business owners and make sure that they're doing things, purely because, culturally, ethically, if they don't do things right, that's not my kind of client.
No.
But also to protect the business and make sure what they're doing right by the employee as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, we've done some things for our business whereby we do the 4-day work week and navigating that, and working with HR people in the past where they just didn't get it. Are you crazy? What you're doing?
Yeah.
And we figured it out, and then we've done and we've had people that finally do get it and helped us out to get the contracts and stuff ready. I think there's the aspects of with just the sheer amount of things that have changed with remote working as well.
Yeah.
Where everyone's now working from home because they don't really want to drive into work. So now you go completely over to that. And then there's like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm using my own electricity.
Yeah.
And they go, well, hang on a minute, but now you're not driving to work. So there's all this grey area that we've having to navigate. I think we're there now as a company, but we had an HR company that kind of like helped us on that journey. And things change, right? There's always something to change again and something to change again. And I think for me, what we find with HR is that it's a case of they've been quite instrumental in key moments of things that we've tried to achieve where we just don't know the information. We don't know what are we doing right, are we doing wrong, how does that work? So I think for me, I know a lot of people get nervous with HR companies, but then I'm also in marketing, and I know a lot of people get nervous with marketeers. So, that same skepticism. But I think you need that people person that understands the law, understands what your responsibilities are, and understand both sides. And I think we've been fortunate in the past where that's worked, to help us navigate through some difficult situations, where both parties have eventually been okay. It's benefited both of us. So I think the HR world is quite closely linked to then the aspects of recruitment and all that other wonderful stuff.
Intertwined.
And I think I would say in the last 5 years, the workplace has changed incredibly.
Certainly post-COVID. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. For me, it's been, just, I think just employing someone, what they want, what they want out of it. Whereas before it's almost a given that they would drive to work. Yeah. Now it's something, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Or I've heard stories where people were getting London waiting wages, but they live in Surrey and going, well, I'm not coming to London. And I was like, well, then you don't get London waiting. And then having to go for a whole HR process to iron that one out. So I think I would say your job in the last 5 years has been quite a busy one.
It has, and it is getting tougher, and it's quite surprising. Recently, actually, quite a few of my HR colleagues, within the independent community, are actually leaving to go back to corporate.
Really?
Yeah, quite a few people. It's a tough gig, being an independent consultant.
That's why I said, that's why I opened it up. It is a tough gig.
It is. It's. I think when you're in-house, when you're in a corporate company, it's a little bit different because you've got a team around you, big teams. You normally, you've kind of got that. But when you're independent, you're quite exposed.
Yeah.
And you're down, rolling your sleeves up, getting your hands dirty through to the blue sky thinking. You're all things to everybody when you're an independent consultant, but you're really quite vulnerable. And the only way that I get through that is just be me, just be honest, be transparent, be open. Don't try and fool anybody or sugarcoat something when it's really not easy to sugarcoat.
Yeah.
So it's just being completely transparent with things.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine worked in quite a large corporate, and he's like, I would guess now, I think he is like head of HR for that particular large corporate. And some of the stories that were told in the background, it's a tough gig, and I think for me, when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to grow a business and you're taking that risk, I think sometimes the risk for the entrepreneur is finding the right people and keeping the right people. And it's a minefield, and I think with recruiters, they're finding it as well.
Yeah,
sure. They're finding it hard to recruit on behalf because they might get someone through the door, but they're not necessarily going to stay 2, 3, 4 months, and then it's back round that mountain again. So I think the employer and the employee market is the HR is the bridge. You need it.
Yeah.
And I think that your business is only as good as the team, I believe.
100%.
And it's trying to keep them happy. And we see it at football where one of the players has a bit of a problem and goes and mouths off to all the reporters, and they've got an HR issue. That's what it is. At the end of the day, it's an HR issue. He's gone public on stuff that should be behind closed doors. And so whether it's high level Premier League football teams or whether it's Joe Smo and 3 employees, it applies. Dealing with people in an employee role is massive.
People are people wherever you go.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, what size the company is. People still behave the same, and especially if they're not treated properly or they perceive that they're not treated properly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about expectations on both sides, setting your stall out, grassroots, making sure that, people, when they come on board, they understand they've got a clear job description. From the moment they're recruited, that recruiter is the first person who contacts them. That's the first impression. And from the moment they come on till they read their contract, till they read the terms and conditions, through to the whole onboarding experience, it is a whole life cycle.
Yeah.
And if you don't know your people, how are they, if you don't know what's going on, if you don't understand what makes them tick or what frustrates them, how are you ever going to be able to get the best out of them?
Yeah.
So it is when people come on board, to attract and retain, it's spend time with them. So people, having one-to-ones, regular one-to-ones, managing them whilst they're in that probation period. It shouldn't be a horror show. It should be a mutual thing. It's a two-way street.
It's conversation.
It is. It's conversation, it's communication, and it's transparency every single time.
Yeah.
And when somebody is certainly in probation, as long as they know that what's expected of them to give them the best possible experience, you don't want to get that wrong, because you're back to the
No,
drawing board.
no.
So it's a lot of businesses will say, oh my gosh, Leanne, we don't have time to do these probation review meetings. We don't have time to do the one-to-ones with staff. And I'm like, that's crucial. It's not about, the quantity, it's about the quality of those meetings. You don't need to be doing them every week. You could be doing the one-to-ones, certainly in probation periods. You're doing them, sort of in between the review meetings. So it's half an hour sat down. It doesn't have to be, sat there for an hour and everybody's looking at the ceiling thinking this is horribly uncomfortable. So it is a two-way street.
It is, and I think the other aspect of it, I think, is that when you are working with a team, this is not the only time that you talk to them. It's like there needs to be ongoing conversation. Like we're talking now, that there needs to be that how you doing, little check-ins here and there. I mean, we meet on a daily basis. We're remote now, fully remote, which has its own problems. Where people become very siloed and you're forever trying to bring everyone back around the ideal, oh, this could be better, or this client could have said this, or listen, the reality is it's never going to be perfect.
No.
And I think that, and if you understand that we're working to be better than we were yesterday, then we got half a chance of winning, right?
Yeah.
And I think that for me is a good thing, but it's just get people out of their heads and start speaking and conversing is a good thing. I don't think that always happens. And with remote, it's quite easy to just, I'm only going to respond to you on text, or I'll only write on this.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there is a Slack channel that exists for the team internally, and then there's Teams, which is more official, and then there's the regular meetings like on screen, and then ultimately we do get together. But it's been a learning curve, I think, for me. We've gone from 4-day work week to R&D days to fully remote. I mean, it's been a journey, and I think I look back now and I think, wow, I think now we want to add to the team and grow the team, and now we're working internationally. I think my thing is just always making sure that we got finding the right fit. That's probably the hardest thing for me.
And how are you going to know if they're the right fit if you don't talk to them?
Exactly.
So spending that crucial time with them and working remotely, it's just communication.
Yeah.
It's just keeping that communication line open. So the world has gone, say, post-COVID. It's weird because when I did my CIPD qualification, my dissertation was on flexible working. And at the time, people went, oh, my God, Leanne. People don't, and I'm sure I only passed it.
Yeah.
Because they really didn't understand what it was back then.
No, and that's incredible. I mean, for me, what was, I lived in a house, so there was 4 of us in the house, and one of the guys decided to work from home in the house. They installed his kit, installed his computer, his modem, and he literally stayed in underneath the stairs working. That was not good for him.
No,
I didn't think it was when I look back now, I think that pushed him into areas of depression, because people just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And although he would joke, at least I can watch the cricket, and have it on in the background, or when Big Brother was on, it was playing in the background. He became very lonely very quickly.
Yeah.
I think post-COVID, I think, yes, we can work remote, but there is definitely that because we used to connect, there is that element of wanting to continue to connect that's still there.
And having the regular touch points meetings, like getting the staff in, even if it's like once every other week or something, even if you're going out for drinks or around the table meeting, whatever. So you do get to see each other's faces, not just on a screen.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like for me, because we got like a video arm, which you can see some of the video stuff today, the team do get together, certain members of the team get together and see each other. But listen, I think that's always in the back of my head. How do we stay connected, not just online? How do we stay connected with people? So with you, like as you grow and we're working with entrepreneurs, what do you think are the common challenges that you faced for a leader, an entrepreneur, a business owner? What's their biggest sort of like frustrations, do you think?
A lot of it is, and I keep using a lot of it is communication, where businesses don't spend enough time. They either don't recruit, they get people, they want bums on seats and they get them in quite quickly, and they don't understand their people. Going back to that thing around making what frustrates people, what makes them tick, understanding their people. Because if you know your team, and you know what's going on, whether something's going on in work, the challenges they've had, the successes that they've had, and recognising those, perhaps even what's going on at home for them as well. Gone are the days where they used to say, leave your problems at the door when you go to work. That doesn't
No.
happen anymore. So it's understanding your team and what's going on, and making sure that they've got the equipment, they've got the communication, they've got everything that they need to be able to do the job properly.
Yeah.
And a lot of it now is very much about well-being in the workplace. So I can remember when we were going through COVID, I can remember at the time the government saying that there was going to be more responsibility on employers to make sure that people were well whilst they're in work. And I
Yeah.
can remember people going, God, no, scoffing, literally scoffing at people, thinking, no, that can't happen. Why is that our responsibility? It is, absolutely is.
Yeah.
So whether or not you're putting, employee assistance programs in place, whether you put business, mentors in or buddies in, having duvet days, all the small things, health insurance that doesn't have to cost the earth.
Yeah.
I work with one particular health insurance company, and it is really, really affordable, and the difference that it makes. But it's the frustration, I think, is around keeping people, the retention. So, but if you're belts and braces and you've got everything that you want in place, and again, people understand what they can expect from you, but also they know what's expected from them. So it is just
Yeah.
them setting out clear targets and goals for them, not stuffy, you must do this by that time. There's got to be some flex in it as well. So as long as staff, they understand them, they're going to get the best out of them. And it's often where things go wrong, where they've just lost their way. And that's an expensive recruitment process then to go back through.
No, it is. And I think, because my brand agency, because we work in tech, you've got web,
Yeah.
you've got 3D, which you're learning now, learning to handle. So there is a demand. We do deliver on it, but it has its own challenges, from rendering large files out to computers screaming because it's using so much memory and replacing graphics cards. So I did have to do that when I was building the website, so like getting the right equipment is quite key. I think for me, it is such a fast-paced world that I live in, particularly with marketing and AI and all this sort of stuff. It's just trying to stay on top of it, to make sure that the team feel like they're progressing, because obviously, my 3D guy, Nathan, he started as a business admin role, and his dream was eventually to do what he's doing now.
That's fantastic.
So we've been on this journey with him, and now he say, I'm doing the one thing I wanted to do. But when he joined us, he was good at admin, so he was like, do that, and when the project comes, we'll slowly do it. And thankfully we took that risk, and it's turned into his dream job. And now it's like, well, how do we accelerate that? And I think now we're doing more and more. The demand is getting bigger. It's like, right, now we need to recruit more people, and so we've always been, I think, always see people as like, we want to take them on a journey, and naturally sometimes that journey will end because they've done everything. We're not like 200 people in our building, and they want to go and experience more or go to a new country. And I think we've evolved, I would say, as a business where we went from working nationally or locally around Bristol, Southwest and Wales to London, and then we've ended up working in Hungary and the United States. So
amazing.
And that is different for me, like my days
culturally different as well.
Culturally different, but like my days are longer, whereas most people are winding down at 4 o'clock. I'm like, oh, here we go. There's conversations going on there. So for me, it's constantly being used to that change and trying to take people on that change with you, and hopefully the people are as flexible to join the journey of that change, but also recognize that there is a journey where it's not for them and they might need to do something else.
Yeah, and that's why it's crucial that you talk to them all the way through, because that probation period, and I keep going on about that, but that is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And imagine a world where somebody's brought on board, they don't get a contract, they don't get a job description, they're left to fend for themselves, nobody talks to them. Are they really going to stay?
No.
Versus making sure that they come in, everything's crystal clear and transparent for them. Everything's set out. They know what they've got to achieve. They know how to behave. They know, they know what to do. They know that the company's going to look after them. If they need some time off or if they're sick, they know what they've got to do. They can see a career path. They understand what their salary is and what it might be later in the future. All those kind of things, setting out those clear posts will make people want to stay. And the amount of times I've gone into businesses and that clarity isn't there, and that's where you see frustration and people won't stay. So if you can get it right, and it's such a reactive, certainly working with HR, people use it as when things have gone wrong. but really setting out your stall early, when
And I think
businesses.
that's a really interesting point there. Is that
Mm,
often HR gets called when things go wrong,
yeah,
but actually HR needs to be, how do we continually make things go right?
yeah.
And I think for me, when I've made a big change in the way that we operate, is often I've been talking to an HR company behind the scenes, purely because, you know, I remember when we implemented the 4-day work week, people thought, "Hey, you're mad. Why are you giving all this amount of time and no one's doing it?" And I said, "Well, I
Why not
know,
do it then if you
but
could be the first?
yeah," and we were. And if you Google my name and Creation, which is our brand company, we come up. There's an article on the BBC website. We were like one of the first people talking about it, and I think it's under like some headline. CEO gives his team the day off to go surfing or something like that.
That
And
sounds pretty cool, actually.
yeah, and then I ended up doing the rounds on BBC, and I think I was getting phone calls from BBC Birmingham Radio and Breakfast Show, and just saying, listen, it's another way of doing things, and what we found is it was great for retention.
Yes.
The biggest thing doing something like that was that when I went in, this is why it's quite interesting with HR and being armed with HR, is sometimes your employees don't know what's best for them. And so when I went in and said, we're doing the 4-day work week, the immediate kickback was, how are we going to do our work?
Yeah.
And so I went, well, I don't know, but we'll figure it out, but you're still having time off. And the way we worked it is we did it on a 2-week cycle. So it's 4-day work week where one Friday is R&D day and one Friday is day off.
So, okay, so you piloted it first.
Yeah. Now we've tried to go fully 4-day, as in both weeks, but we definitely got pushback saying, no, we don't want it. We actually like the R&D day, and we feel that it makes more sense to be this way. And for me, I took that feedback on. I really wanted to push for it a few years ago, and it's like, no, we're happy like this, because where else are we going to learn?
Yeah.
So R&D is part of what we do as much as that day off. And at the time, a lot of our team had young kids, so they didn't have any babysitters, so now they could have a day together with their partner and go and do stuff.
Yeah, the work-life balance there definitely works, doesn't it? From that, and I think it does take people's their mindsets to change and try it. Because there is, I think, especially here in the UK, we're such workaholics.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, we work more than most European
most of
nations.
European countries. Yeah, so I think that is very, very different, and countries in Europe have been doing that for a long time already. So it's very much about just crack on with it and just do it and get on with it, because it does help. And if you're setting, when you're recruiting as well, that's quite an attractive piece as well for someone.
Oh, it's massively. I mean, the biggest thing we had was when we made the decision, and then it was a case of, what are we doing that's wasting time? Because, for example, we were building a different navigation for every website that we ever built, coded from scratch. And we worked out we didn't need to do that. We could then do 8 or 10 pre-built, and then configure them differently.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you don't need any more than 8, right? But we're like trying to rethink and do another crazy, and now there's various different options, and we've got that. And so the same thing with the way we used to build websites. We used to code them all, and then we used WordPress, and then we found a plugin that enabled us to build websites quicker, which done much more of the heavy lifting. We still got the brand, the uniqueness, the prototyping, but changed the way we build. And I think what happens is when you compress the time, without going, you've only got this amount of time to do it. We're not going to make you work 15 hours each day to make up for the day that you got off. That was the conditions. 1, you'd get paid the same, and 2, we wouldn't compress the hours. We had to think differently, and we did. And then all of a sudden, now we make it work for us. It works, which was unusual. And then I was on a radio show. I remember going on BBC 5 Live, I think it was. I was on the evening with one of the Apprentice winners, and they then got someone else who was semi-famous. So they'd literally messaged me, and then they ghosted me, and they got someone else on. And I was like, what was going on? And I heard the thing, and they basically were like, oh no, we the way we do the 4-day work week is, and they basically gave every reason why it wouldn't work. So they compressed the hours. So they'd make everyone work like 10 hours a day.
Oh, compressed working.
Yeah. oh, we do 10 hours, and then I'm like, that's not the 4-day work week.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, and their pay was reflected of that.
That's not 4-day working. That's compressed working. Yeah.
And I was literally there on the radio going, no,
Yeah.
no. I was so annoyed. So I actually did write to them back. I said, one, this is this. And two, this isn't the person that you was champion 4-day work week. That's not 4-day work week, any stretch of the imagination. And I got like a 2-line apology. Oh, news travels fast in this media world. Da, 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 da. It was like a really lame excuse. and I was just like, you know what? I was like, no, but having done it and having practically gone through those hoops, because it's like, how does it work? How does it implement? We know how it works now. So I do advise other people when they're thinking of it. I do get approached every now and then. Oh, we're thinking of doing it. How do you think it works? And I said, well, as long as you do this, that, and the other. And I think the research that I did was that Google's Gmail and Google Maps, that came out of the R&D days. So that 20% of the time of the staff is on special projects at Google. And that's where they invented all this new stuff. So Google Mail, lots of people use it. Google Maps is massive, but that came out of the R&D time. So I realized that R&D, as much as time off and well-being, R&D is really important for the future of the business. So, certainly a lot of the AI tools that are coming out and stuff like that, we needing to learn this stuff. Now we have time to do it. I remember saying ChatGPT, like, what's all that?
Oh, I love it.
And now it's great. But again, it's just saying, well, don't use it. It's a research tool. It's not everything. It's not an everything tool. And so we have that space. And I think for me, when we've had recruiters approach and they've fed back what they actually get, the recruiters have gone, oh, we can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And it's like, good. But I think for me, that's allowed us to retain staff on a longer term basis, 100%. And I feel that, we have been quite pioneering. And I guess the way I look at now is like, well, what else is out there? And looking at employee-owned trusts and all that sort of world as well. So I think it's always about thinking about the retention piece, then how can you do best for your people, but also actually, how do you make it a fun place to work?
Yeah, because I think, well, by doing all the, it's kind of listening to your staff as well, so, gone are the days of you have like boring annual surveys that everyone would roll their eyes at and nothing would ever get done with them.
Yeah.
So when I'm working with business, I recommend something called pulse surveys or temperature checks.
Yeah.
So just do a short survey once a quarter or even sometimes twice a year that's maybe half a dozen questions, maybe a few more. So you're not really, asking these ridiculous questions that everybody doesn't even want to answer.
Yeah.
But it's just those regular temperature checks going through, and asking your staff what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what do they think are your benefits, what do they think are your working hours, and listening to them and actually doing something with that data, because that will help you evolve and change and not stand still.
100%.
So those definitely help.
So one of the things that I find is we're obviously a branding agency and we work with a lot of companies, and we get to the values piece. And they're like, what are they? Just stuff we stick on the wall. And I'm like, no, actually, they could become intrinsic to your reviews, your one-to-ones and stuff like that. And, we've helped educate people that the values are behaviors, and behaviors are good to reward or discipline against as a business. But I'm still shocked even today that is not a common thing. It's not
to have values in place, you mean?
To have values in place, but actually not values stuck on a wall, that actively use values as a way of recruiting and a way of rewarding and a way of building. I still find it quite astounding in today's modern life how that education doesn't seem to be commonplace.
A lot of businesses, well, if they've branded properly, they'll have those.
Yeah.
And especially if they're smaller businesses, they typically don't tend to have them. So, but if you're, again, you don't have to have them stuck on the wall. That's gone. So it's so 90s, isn't it? So
no, they've got. For me, it's not about. It's got to be intrinsic to the organisation.
Yeah, but again, that's about setting expectations. How do they know how to behave? How do they know what's expected of them unless you tell them from the onset? And it's clearly how you recruit these people, what you're telling them during that process. And how you're onboarding them then as well. So they need to live and breathe and feel what you're doing, not just reading, a handbook that says this is our mission statements, this is our values, because everyone goes, ugh. It's how you spend time with those individuals then 100%. And get to know them, as I say, and then they'll get you. They should get you if you're speaking to them regularly and making it your culture.
So a lot is said, we've been talking about employees, looking after them. What about the employer? Because I think I think the employer has had a pretty tough time the last
Oh,
five
we're in
years.
for a roller coaster. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. They're
and
in.
and I think the weight and the heaviness, and maybe I'm talking a bit from myself as well, having experienced it, that it has been a tough time. The last 5 years has not been easy
Mm-hmm.
for business owners. So, how do you help them? How do you help them feel like you're in their corner? Not, hey, we're against the employees because you need them to do the job, but
Yeah,
how do you help them? Because, I mean, the amount of things that have changed,
yeah.
even NI and all these other things, taxes, NI, and the expectations on them. It's a lot. It's a lot for them to cope with. So how do you
Yeah.
work with them?
Yeah, so I got to be honest, I think this is probably in the 20 odd years I've been doing HR, this is probably one of the most pivotal moments that I've seen, from an employment rights perspective, because there is just so much changing. And you've got this push and pull between, the government and House of Parliaments that can't agree on the new employment legislation coming through. So the that is really challenging for businesses because, as HR professionals, we've got to be one step ahead in advising businesses what's coming. And if government can't agree with Houses of Parliament, so the example is we've got unfair dismissal rights. It's just the week before last, I think it was a week last Thursday, that finally agreed. The government wanted day one rights, and now Houses of Parliament have said no. So it's going to be 6 months from now on. But the amount, it's £118,000 a maximum claim on an unfair dismissal claim. Now they're going to be uncapping that, so it's going to be a free for all. And that's just one of the biggest ones coming through.
And there's
And
a whole load of lawyer companies birthed,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
we turn into a
yeah.
litigation society.
Yeah, it's and employment tribunals are backing up. It's incredulous, in terms of the system is kind of creaking already. So all we can do, and next year we've got Fair Workers Agency coming in as well, which is a government organisation that's going to be checking to make sure that businesses do right. If they don't, they'll be fining the employees, and
Wow.
that money goes to the government. So the government are doing it. I get they're trying to grow the economy, but I think what's the economy growing by? Something like 0.1%, something
I think it's
ridiculous.
growing.
Yeah, is it? Yeah,
No, I think the last thing was it's stagnant, but
yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
but 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 go saying that, it's one of those things that I've heard it said in certainly the circles I've been in. Is
Mm.
it really worth employing anyone nowadays?
Mm,
Because and I'm not saying I like the fact that everyone's involved and
yeah,
they're on the same page and we're part of a team, and I think you can't do that otherwise. But I think there are people there that have been in the game are just tired,
yeah,
and they goes, you know what, I just be a consultant,
yeah.
and I'll farm out what I need to,
Hmm.
and I just be that. And for me, that's really bad news for companies looking to employ people, because
Yeah,
ultimately people then stop employing people, and that's a bigger problem. And I think that's why I say, what's out there for entrepreneurs, because they seem to be battered left, right, and center,
mm,
and yet, the situation is you've got these people where they want to build a team, but then go, it's too much like hard work. Maybe I'm going to get sued. You hear all this stuff. It's like, well, it's only a matter of time where I'm going to get it wrong, and then I'm
yeah,
going to get done. Is it really worth it? And I'm like, in the same way I look at the farming world, where farmers are quitting left, right, and
yeah,
center.
yeah.
Yeah, you're getting entrepreneurs going, well, I'll just do it myself,
Mm.
which then, is fine, but we're not building like we used to. We're not building companies and great infrastructure and innovation, because we're now being intimidated by red tape.
Yeah.
And I would argue in that, even those people that want to do right, it only takes someone who wants to do wrong, and it's a
It's
sad
so I mean,
time of
the
affairs.
answer is you need someone like us, so you
Yeah,
need HR consultants,
100%.
and you've got, and not when the world is on fire, you've got to bring us in early.
Yeah,
The way I begin a journey with a new client is I'll do an HR health check with them. So I look at where they're compliant, where they're not compliant,
yeah,
but I also look at their health and safety. I look at their leasing, I look at their insurances, their recruitment. There's a whole array to make sure that they're compliant in
yeah,
all areas of their business, not just from an HR perspective, because from a well-being perspective, what what benefits have they got or not got, and then we build a 12-month plan. So it's a red, amber, green system in terms of what we need to prioritise. That moves minds. I was with a client last week. We did the HR health check in August, and she's already achieved loads. And she was like, we need to go back and review it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, it's already outdated, which is what it's supposed to do. So, and she's a dream, you know, she'll ring me up and she'll ask me a question. I'm like, great start, because you already know this isn't right. And the fact that you've bounced it off me is brilliant. But so many businesses don't do that. They're afraid to do
and I think that's the key word there. They're afraid.
Yeah.
And I think the more they hear legislation and
Yeah,
everything like that,
yeah.
they go, rather just, you know, some people just carry on in ignorance because that's probably a better place,
Yeah.
even though it's the wrong place. They think, oh, well, then I'll keep going because
Yeah.
at least it's a less stress than
Yeah.
what I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
It's yeah, and I think where I'm at is, as an entrepreneur, I really want to live in a country that inspires people to start businesses and build. And I think at the moment I look at the landscape and I'm going, wow.
Yeah, well,
You
our
gotta
schools need to do better for that, I think.
Yeah.
You know, we need to grow entrepreneurs within schools,
Agreed.
rather than academia. You know, we were talking about this earlier on. I think schools really do need to start breeding entrepreneurs, because it's very much, you know, they're coming out with, you know, all the A stars and all the rest of it, but where are they going? And if there's no jobs for them to go into, it's a really difficult world, you know, for kids coming into the working world these days. But if we can teach them, you know, to come fresh out of school, stand up on their own 2 feet and have an idea and have that braveness, you know, and be bold and do it, why not? Why wouldn't we support more businesses like that?
And I think that's the key thing for me, is that education is really important, but how you educate is even more important.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think, and for me, I'm not convinced that the school system is producing what we need it to produce, which is why we homeschool. But at the same time, yeah, and I know that's not right for everybody, not everybody can do it, but there is a fundamental flaw in the system at the moment, which is to create drones to not be able to think for themselves, to make decisions for themselves and take risks. It's more toe the party line, do what you're told and get on with it. And I think ultimately that makes work a less attractive place than where it should be. We had a guest on before, it said, I'm doing the role that I kind of, how I made my decision, said, will I enjoy it? You know, and he's always enjoyed sport. And somehow, although he didn't make it as a rugby player or a soccer player, he's doing a role that he's enjoying. He's in charge of a football club now. And do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's the type of people that we want. And
follow the passion.
Follow the passion. I always look at it this way. It's more, if you can find your purpose, you'll be passionate about your purpose. You know, I'm passionate about music, but you don't want to hear me sing, right?
Go on.
Yeah. So I think it's like, how do we find someone's skills, talents, and abilities and maximize those? Because those are their gifts. Those are the gifts to the world that they have.
Yeah.
So if you're a young person and you're an amazing communicator, you're always rallying people around you. You know, when you're going to go and play a game, they've always got 15 kids hanging off them because they go, let's go and climb trees, and everyone decides to do that. Then there's something there about them being a gatherer. And if you can then go, right, well, what careers would that do? And how do you rally? Maybe he becomes a student of leadership. You know, maybe he goes into politics. That's why I'm frustrated with the school system, because we don't see that until they're 18, 19, 20, or at 28, they're reinventing themselves because they finally find out what they really want to do.
Yeah,
and I think
tough, and especially with AI now as well.
Yeah,
that's a massive contributor coming in. So because AI is challenging our world, and you know, kids coming out of school now, you know, there aren't going to be the jobs there because a lot of AI is doing it for them now.
No.
So it's if they can use it early enough, understand it early enough, and incorporate that into their everyday lives and to their passion and what they want to do, then I think that's really going to help the future.
And what's interesting about it is that, you know, I think younger people now are asking the deeper questions. Is like, if I go to university, what's the ROI?
Yeah.
They're asking that question now, and they're going, it's not worth it.
Yeah, we come out with 40 grand, 50 grand's worth of debt. Yeah.
Exactly, and you've just done a degree for fashion, you know, and unless they're going to start their own fashion brand, it's going to be very hard.
Yes. Yeah.
So I look at it this way, and I go, well, you know, I've always been a big fan of apprenticeships, always. You know, apprenticeships for me, you know, I did a year before so I left school and I did a year's like YT scheme, if you can remember
YTS.
those. YTS. I did it for a year. I didn't need it to go on the course, but I spoke to someone who was at the other end, and they said they were all struggling to get jobs because they didn't have work experience.
Yeah.
So I preloaded with a year's worth of work experience. Then when I finished 4 years, I came out and I was the first one to get a job. I got a job like that.
Even that's really difficult now, though, with apprenticeships, because they need, the grades they need. And if they're not particularly academic, but they are still very practical kids, they can't get apprenticeships these days. Even that's become quite tough.
Yeah. And for me, that's changed again, right? So what I'm finding is, like, I was scrolling through Instagram today, as a young guy, and he said, I worked a couple of summers, I put all my money away and I bought a piece of land. And he said, then I managed to build a load of units, and there was like a storage unit. And he said, I think he was like 22, he's turned over £1 million.
Oh, wow.
And he said, and all my mates are at uni. He said, which one's the winner? And it was an amazing story. And whether it's true or not, we don't know, but you could see what he had built.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely we're in this juncture where, with AI and with all the normal office jobs and that starting to be, I think there's going to be, if you had your money now, I'd say learn a trade.
Yeah. And both my boys are self-employed. They run a company together, and they are trades. And I always, whereas my daughter's very academic.
Yeah.
So, and I always used to say, you've got to get your grades, you've got to get in there. And really now they're flying.
Yeah.
And I'm super proud of both of them. I can't get a shelf put up, mind, but
Yeah.
But trades is definitely the way, because I don't think that'll be something that will be picked up by AI as much as it is everything else.
No, it might help you prep a room or decide where to
You
pot stuff, but you physically need someone to do it.
It'll probably outdo CAD or something like that at some point.
Yeah.
But I think it is definitely the way. And I was talking to somebody recently who said, look, I'm told my son not to go to uni. I want him to do a trade. But he wants to go to uni for the uni lifestyle. So, it's kind of, and he's like, I've got to work till I'm 65 to pay for his fees as well. But you can't convince him to do a trade. But it even in HR though, back earlier this year, IBM made 8,000 of their HR people redundant because AI is taken over. So it is, but I think at a more junior level, can't, well, not yet, do some of the things that we do, some of the investigation stuff that we have to do. It is very intrinsic, and you kind of got now a world where a lot of it can be done on automation. I use a lot of it to automate a lot of what I'm doing now. So I save so much time, and it enables me to go on and do other things. But, if IBM are doing it, and you think, well, people now trying to get into HR as well, it's really difficult because they're coming in at maybe with this, the CIPD level 7 degree, and they've got no real experience, but they can't get a job because there isn't that entry level role that's really there anymore.
No, it's an interesting one, because like, one of my other companies is called Humans, and it's all about being happier, healthier, smarter, and kinder. And we're not HR, that's not us at all. We're about culture and creating company culture. And I think as much as you can use HR tools and all this AI tools or whatever else, you need to take your leaders out of an environment and get them around and discuss bigger topics and bigger things. And I think that, again, in that leadership and education space, yes, you can watch videos, you can listen to podcasts and all that, great, but you still need that practical one-on-one talking with someone to unpack things. Some people learn by just talking it out, for example. Some people learn by doing, someone's modeling and I'll copy them. So for me, I think that in that space there's always going to be that there, and I think the HR companies that will win are the ones that diversify a little bit,
for sure,
and don't lose sight of, we could do it all on an app. Yeah, you can, but eventually you won't need you either. So building your whole HR thing around an app, that's great in the next 2 to 3 years, but someone's got more money, more information to feed it, will be better than your app, and eventually you'll be paying that app to do it yourself. So maybe have a look at how can you be more personable, because I think what I found in the areas of investment, for example, if I'm investing £1 million, I want to talk to a human. If I want to invest £1,000, I might use something on AI to tell me what to do. And I think when it's like very mission critical and there's a lot of risk involved or whatever, like employing 1,000 people, or we've just won this huge contract and I've got to hire 25 people as a team now, I'm going to need my HR team. I'm going to need them involved. I'm going to need the conversations. And I think for me, it won't go away, but it's a case of the human contact is always going to win.
And
long
that's
term.
very much what my brand is about as
Yeah,
well, you know.
100%.
So I think, you know, my strapline is putting the human back into HR.
Yeah,
Having worked in corporate for such a long time, and you just people just become numbers in the bigger companies. And I've worked in smaller companies, I've worked in larger corporate companies, and it took me 2 years of procrastination and total burnout, really,
yeah,
to be able to go and do this for myself. And I blinked and I was doing it. And it was like, what do I want to do? How do I want to do this? I know how not to do it from working with some of the big corporates. When you're
yeah.
taught, you know, when you're asked to go and do something, when you're doing an investigation, it's not quite the way they expected, and you're asked to twist and change it. That's what I mean by earlier on when I said my moral compass was on the floor. I was like, I can't work like this.
No,
So I prefer to work with businesses that look after their people, that want to talk to their people, putting the human into it. You know, I'm pretty straight talking. And when I was building my brand, it was like, what do I want people to know? What do I want people to think? You know, people say to me, Leanne, you're not a typical HR person. I said, what does that mean? You know, well, you're not stuffy and square. And I'm like, oh, great, thanks for that.
yeah. It's not always about compliance, is it? I mean, that's the
No,
thing.
you've got
It's
to be human. You've
exactly.
got to be human, and I wanted something that represents me the way I do it. And for KLAR, that does mean, you know, straightforward, transparent, and bright, and the warmth as well.
Yeah.
You know,
What does
because
KLAR mean?
straightforward, transparent, and bright.
Oh, look at that.
You said it.
Glad I asked. Yeah. So, from your perspective, I mean, one of the things that we are a B Corp as a company, and anytime we go through the branding journey, we do recommend our clients get involved with it,
Yeah.
because there are elements. One of the key components of it is people.
Yeah.
And I think those sorts of initiatives are really important to ensure that you do get the right people that
Yeah.
are focused maybe on impact rather than just income, and create healthy cultures. You know, from yourself, is there any other thing that you've heard of recently other than B Corps that are out there that could help businesses almost have a bit of a framework to become better?
So, I mean, it's in terms of having a framework to become better, it's, have your HR service in place.
Yeah.
It is very much about that, you know, in terms of, like I said earlier on, people are reactive, and it's just, you've got to get it right from the start. And going back to the point we talked about earlier around people being afraid, you know, they think that, and I'll give you a quick example now, you know, that to have an HR consultant on board is expensive, but let me tell you, it's nowhere near as expensive if you end up in an employment tribunal.
Correct.
And back earlier this year, I had a client who was just coming on board with me. He had somebody who'd only been with him at that time for 4 months, and he rang me up. He's like, Leanne, I know we haven't quite got you on board, but I need some advice on this. And it was a long story short, she wasn't behaving particularly well, and she was suspended. During that process, she put a grievance in against the company owner. By the time we'd investigated it and we brought her in, you know, and she'd appealed, we went through the whole process. She'd been there for 7 months. She cost him £17,000. £17,000 because he had to pay somebody else to come in and do her job as well. And you know, it was in time and his investment. I called him one day, and he was in, you know, his head's within hands, and he said, like, I've just costed what this has cost me, and that wasn't even my costs.
No, I know.
So it was, you know, so get it right from the start, get your framework in place, build your business properly. Don't be afraid to start a business, but make sure that you've got a good HR consultant on board, like KLAR, to be able to make sure that you get things right, because the challenge is huge.
No, it is.
Challenges are huge.
It is. And I think for me, it's about, I've always been about helping people get into the workplace and help them grow. And ultimately, they do move on and go and do other things, which is great. And it's always about, you know, I always feel that the people that I bring on is, how do I help them get to their purpose?
Yeah.
And I don't lose sight of that. You know, we had someone come to us not so long ago that been with us for a long time but wanted to do something completely different, and it was like, go for it. You know, you've done your stint with us. There's not really too many other places that you can go without doing other things, as in learning again and building yourself up. So it was like, go for it, you know, and go and try something else. You know, you only live once, right? So you know, and I think for me, what we found is that it's been unusual for us. We seem to have staff that stay with us quite a long time.
That's always a really good sign. You're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and even then I get upset. It's like, oh, they've been with us 7 years, now they're moving on. And it's like, well, you know what?
But that's a pat on the back
18
for
months.
you. Yeah.
18 months is often the cycle now.
Yeah, if it was 7 months and costing you 17 grand, that'd be different.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing, is like, trying to help people get to where they need to get to, but at the same time watching them grow up, watching them get married and watching them have kids and that sort of, it is great,
Rewarding.
and rewarding. And I think that's ultimately now my children are getting older and starting to get involved, so it is a reward in terms of seeing people learning new skills and growing and stuff like that. But I think, I don't want to be scared of ever taking people on or giving people a chance ever.
No.
And I think you're right. Having that HR person in your corner allows you to keep doing that. And I think when legislation becomes so tight, so to speak, then at least we got someone in our corner just to make sure that we're not going to get anything wrong, because it does cost, it does hurt as well.
It does. It's going to cost them far more if they do end up in court. And I think that what's really important is in businesses as well is equipping the teams, making sure that managers are not just managers by title, that they're people managers.
Yeah.
So we offer a lot of soft skills training to equip managers, and I do a lot of coaching as well. So I'll do coaching with employees and coaching with business leaders, to get them there. They've got the answers, they've just got to come up with it.
Yeah.
But the training, things like managing people, sickness and absence, probation, what do they do, how do they do it, how do they make sure they're legally compliant, having those really difficult conversations, so having those really tricky conversations, how do they manage those types of things, because you're putting people in play and then you kind of like sending them out there to the big bad world, but if you don't give them a toolkit to know what they've got to do, they're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
So it's making sure that you give them what they need.
I think it's a really important thing you said there is coaching. I still think that every business owner, entrepreneur needs a peer-to-peer network.
Yeah, for sure.
And they need the aspect of coaching in their life 100%, because I think at the same time as you're giving out to the employees, you can only give what you've got.
Yes.
So you need to be constantly inputting into yourself to be able to give them new tools, new ways of things. And sometimes it does help not being super technical when you go to the techies. Well, have you thought, hang on a minute, that's an interesting one. Yeah. And, but look at it from a leadership perspective and say, look, what you're doing down today works, and it probably work for the next 3 years. But, one thing I've got chewing over in my head continually is how long's website's going to be around for? We're moving to the metaverse, whether we like it or not. Yeah, it's still in its infancy, but the speeds of the internet are speeding up now. With AI, we've got data centers popping up left, right, and center. So, what used to take a lot of space, a lot of framework to download or whatever, is now becoming easier. So, go test driving a car online is easier, to make happen. And they've already started doing it in some brands. So it's like, what are we doing for me as a brand agency, where we go from being online on a website, which we scroll up and down, to going deep and being immersive? There's a whole new world of change, and thankfully
there is, but it's staying human at the same time.
100%.
I think, so I think we're getting lost in the AI verse of, that's kind of going, and I'm a big advocate for it. As I say, I use it a lot, but there's nothing quite like, being human and being in touch with your staff and getting to grips with them.
You've got people building it, right?
They're your biggest investment, but also when things go belly up, they're your biggest headache as well.
100%.
So, and so many businesses will say, oh my gosh, my wage bill. I'm like, okay. And then we've had recruitment, and then we've had that person leave and that person leave. And I'm like, okay, so what are we doing about that? Why are people leaving? What are the reasons why they're leaving? Why, look at your recruiting. Can we recruit smarter? Can we look at those recruitment costs? All of that type of thing, really. And then what are you doing when you've got them? How are you making this a great place to work? So, and it isn't the tail wagging the dog kind of thing, because it isn't all on employees' terms. I think there's got to be a 50-50 in the middle. So, but employers do have to work harder these days.
They do.
To keep their people.
And I think where I'm at is this: no matter how technical the world goes, I've got two things. I've got to find people that are interested in it, that want to express themselves in that world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's continually mitigate the fact that people become more and more and more isolated, and that's kind of where we're at. So, I'm starting to see a lot more agencies now going fully remote for that reason.
Yeah.
But what I've seen as a trend is that networking has grown. So whereas before networking wasn't as big,
Yeah.
it's like a lot of the people are going to networking because that's the only time they see humans.
Yeah, they see.
You know, in the physical. So in my world, I think I've met a lot of like, you know, a lot of people that are in a similar situation. Like, oh, I'm really happy I'm around people again.
They're
You know,
getting out.
yeah, you know, because that's your walking past the water cooler and having a conversation type thing.
It would have been that. Yeah.
It would have been that, but you haven't got that now. So I think for me, no matter how techie or how remote or how virtual we become, people are people, and we need to be more human. And having people like yourselves engaging with them are you know, it's absolutely vital, because what you do is you go, stop, don't forget about the human. Don't forget about the human. There is a person behind the figure and behind the stuff. You know?
Yeah, and the way ethically how I work as well is having been on the, you know, the other side of it, having been employed, you know, by big corporates, and I've worked in HR and I've been not treated so well myself, you know, just because we work in HR, when there's no magic bubble around us, or in the ivory tower, as people say that we're in, we get properly roasted by businesses when things go wrong. So the way I work now is when I'm working with my clients, when you've got an employee on the other side of that table, imagine that was you.
Yeah.
You know, how would you want to hear this message? We in HR sometimes deliver, you know, sometimes I say it, we're like the fifth emergency service. You know, we come in, we're like, woo, and try to rescue the situation. But that individual is a human being. You're giving them life-changing information sometimes, or the letters that you're writing are changing lives, changing families' lives.
100%.
So imagine it was you. So try and deliver your message, not soft and fluffy to a degree. There is some of that, but it's how would I want to hear it? How would I want to be treated? And that's very much how when I sit with somebody or sit with a business, how I deliver messages.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the thing. It's like, again, HR, it's always about how do you fight the fires, but the long-term plan for me, it's not about fighting. It's how do they become the most effective person that are maximizing their skills, talents, and abilities in the environment they're in. Yeah, that's ultimately what it's about. And that so for me, being a purpose-led business is how do I accentuate those skills, talents, and abilities to the point that you feel like you're learning, you feel like you're using, you feel you've got a canvas. And I'm not naive to think that you're going to work with me for 25 years. If you do, great. But if not, we were part of your story, and hopefully you'll never forget us. You know.
And you want people to remember you with fondness.
Yeah.
You know, so 100%. When people go under a cloud, and they, you know, that's not a nice thing. So if you've enabled them to start their journey, then you're doing something really well. And
sometimes, very rare, but sometimes they do move on, and then they realise, oh,
grass wasn't greener.
It wasn't greener, and I did have it quite well, didn't I? I did have it quite good. And sometimes they have to go and start something themselves to really feel it and know what it's like as well. So, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, Leeanne, to talk about all things HR and stuff. But there is a lot of change, but you know, you've got humans at heart, and that's
for sure.
And so how do we get hold of you?
Yeah, so my website's www.klarhr.co.uk. That's KLAR. Or hello@klarhr.co.uk.
Well, I'm not going to forget Klar.
No, you can say it.
I can say it now. Took me a while. I think my brain was fried. But no, listen, love to have you back. But yeah, just really, really good to hear, you know, that people are people, and you want to help them get to where they need to get to. And ultimately, we can't forget that. You know, that's the workforce is people, and unless they're flourishing, we're going to struggle. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being part of the Purpose People podcast. You're listening to us on a regular basis helps us get the message out there that living life on purpose is the best possible life to live. How can you help us? Well, you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube, but you can also follow our podcast channels, which are on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. Please keep supporting us. Please keep liking and sharing us. Please keep following us on social media. And you know what? We're inspiring more and more people to live life on their terms.